Hi.
Good morning.
Bonjour. Hello. Hola. Ni hao. Howdy. Explain the environment.
Creativity is a social experience. You're not creative alone.
Today we're going to talk about things like trust and teams, and this is something that I've been studying for the past 15 years of my life.
Hello and welcome to this 7th RESKILL Masterclass from the HEC studios on the school's campus. Today we have the pleasure of welcoming Professor Rodolphe Durand, Director of HEC's Purpose Center. Rodolphe, you're the founder and academic director of Sustainability and Organizations, or SNO, and you also hold the chair for the Joly Family Leadership, Purposeful Leadership. As such, you're going to present a masterclass that answers the question, how does purpose drive performance? After Professor Durand's 20-minute presentation, we'll be fielding your questions from our live audience on LinkedIn. Already we invite you to send in your questions for the second part of the masterclass. Oh, and just to say, the replay of this masterclass is immediately available on LinkedIn and the Knowledge at HEC web pages. But before this Q&A session, the floor is yours, Rodolphe.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It's my pleasure to start this presentation with the result of the poll. You remember that some of you answered the questions from the poll. The question was, how can leaders effectively foster a purpose-driven culture in their organization? You had 3 possible answers. The first that came was embody purpose, and that's very good. It was 50% of the answers, because this is what we'll be talking in a second. And the second one was favor autonomy, and the third one, recognize team member. So we'll be dealing with all of this as we speak today, and I'm waiting for your questions as well. But just before we start, let's define purpose. I mean, what is purpose for an organization? Purpose is the reason for being of this organization. It's the why of the organization. And you may have noticed that many organizations, many companies have been, over the past years, defining their purpose and providing this to the outer world and to their employees. And what we'll be trying to think about today is actually how does it connect effectively with the organization's performance. And so when you think of purpose as the reason for being of an organization, as a statement, you may understand it like as a sentence that connects the history of the firm, that is aspirational for the customers or for the employees. You want to buy for this, from this firm, or you want to work for this firm. So as a statement, it's, I think, an interesting idea. But what we'll be saying today is that actually, if you really want to connect it to performance, with performance, we have to give a slightly different definition of purpose, of corporate purpose. And this definition is related to how the employees believe that this statement is authentic. It's true. It's not just that you need just to have this statement on your walls, or on your in your communication. It's more than actually it should be material for everybody and being experienced by everybody. As a matter of fact, when you look at the academic studies from colleagues at HEC Paris, but also from Wharton or Harvard Business School, these works show that the relationship between a purpose statement and a performance is nil. The statement per se, that the firms have their statement of purpose, is not significantly related to the firm performance. However, what we know as well is the way people experience the way they say that they believe that the statement it's clear, it's authentic, makes a difference. So this is the general first idea that I'd like just to make, is that actually just stating your raison d'être or having a purpose as written in some communication text is not really positively related to performance, but the way people experience in their everyday work, in their teams, from top to bottom of the organization, actually, the way they experience the purpose, the way they feel it clearly, purpose clarity makes a difference. And so therefore, what we can think of is about how to develop a purpose-driven culture that will enable your team or your organization to move from just having stated a purpose to taking advantage of this purpose and being more actively engaged and being more efficient in the everyday operations of the company and the team, for instance. And so that's why actually we can think of three main factors that will enable your organization to make purpose drive performance. Again, the purpose is not about making profits. It's for the firms that decide to reflect on their raison d'être or their reason for being, to make this statement and embed it in the different organizational practices. Doesn't mean that you have to have such a purpose definition, but if you do have one, that you better actually use the three factors that we will be talking about in a minute. Also, just before I start with these three levers, if you wish, or these three factors, I mean, the world is full of organizations having developed and defined their purpose, but they are of different kinds, right? For instance, if you take resourcing the world, as for Veolia company, I mean, it's just like a few words, but that has been developed in a longer text that is available for employees, available for stakeholders, and that has been then, if you wish, evaluated along 18 indicators to stress that the performance at the corporate level is multidimensional. They call it plural performance. You may have other ways of stating your purpose. Some use a negation. For instance, the first Google's purpose was "Don't be evil." Do not. I mean, here it's a negation. Or Body Shop had "Enrich, not exploit." Here again, a negation. And you can imagine that depending on what you have in your purpose definition, it will be more or less easier, actually, to activate these three factors that I will be detailing in a second. The more you have a negation in the purpose, I would say, more stringent are the obligations on people, on employees, on the firm. The more obscure is your purpose, or vague, the more difficult it is for people just to really believe in it, of course. If you just state something like, providing the best product for our customers, it's not really a purpose. I mean, it's more something that any firm should strive to achieve, right? So it doesn't really define the reason for being of the organization. Okay, so keeping in mind these differences in the formulation of the purpose itself, let's move on to the actually different levers. The first thing, and that's why the poll was interesting, with 50% having chosen this first answer, it's all leaders at all levels embody the purpose. And this may seem obvious, but it is not in reality. For the firms that have defined their purpose, what we observe is that at the senior and top management level, 80%, 90% of these people actually know the purpose. They are able to articulate it, to explain it, to relate it to the history of the firm, to what they do, to their decisions. But the more you go down in the hierarchy of the organization, the less the purpose is known, understood, and understood and understandable, actually. So, for instance, we know that between 60 and 80% of the employees don't know the purpose of their organization, despite the idea that it has been communicated, it's on our screen each day when we open the computers, etc. It does not percolate, if you will. It does not cascade down. So why is it so? It's very likely because actually the leaders at the different levels, from the top to the mid to the team leaders to everybody that is actually in charge of having some decision power, has not been penetrated by these values or resist them because they don't think that they are actually authentic, achievable, manageable. So the first thing is that you should think about the culture of your own organization and reflect on really the values and the way they are impersonated, embodied by the different leaders. So if you have like a wonderful mission, especially one that contains a negation in it, but that in everyday activities, you cut the corners and you say, yeah, we said this, but actually we don't, for this special case, because it's a long-time client, we cannot really apply this. Well, actually, you are just proving that the purpose is not legitimate per se. And maybe for your team members, you are showing that yourself as a leader is not aligned with the purpose of the organization. So the first one is values. How do you reflect and how do you align the values? The second element is sacrifices. If all leaders at all levels actually embody purpose, that means that the organization should mark certain actions in accordance with the purpose that also probably will hurt the business. So let's take the example of Lush, for instance, a cosmetic company that decided from scratch that they didn't want just to have any animal testing for their products. It happened that this decision prevented them to enter some markets, especially some big markets like some Asian markets. And so this is to show that there are some sacrifices just to be made. Or CVS decided, because their purpose was to help people to move on their way to a better health, decided not to sell tobacco anymore in their stores. Well, that means that actually you cut 2 billion of business at the top level, at the top line, right? So these are sacrifices. So this means that here you are walking your talk and that you are showing that the purpose actually influences the way the organization at all the different levels work. And then also you need to show that you are facing the challenges that will be a bit, against the way the purpose is stated, that you are facing these challenges, firsthand. So for instance, Airbnb, you may remember that some years back, there was like some racial discrimination in the way the apartments were priced or decided upon by the homeowners against certain minorities, etc. So this was not in accordance with the purpose of the firm, and therefore they decided just to really face this challenge immediately and react very stringently against the people who were discriminating their hosts. So first, all leaders at all levels should embody the purpose. The second factor is that you should make purpose tangible and aspirational, right? So that means that inside the organization, just look around and do you have like trainings, workshops where actually purpose is really discussed, where it is practiced, where you have some people coming and telling you, you know what, in this contract, I was unable just to abide by what I think would have been the rules of behavior following the purpose, and discussing, open discussion about this, the way to implement the purpose. If you don't have that, so that means that even if it's written, on the entry wall of your company, maybe that means that this willingness to make the purpose percolate the different practices, to have people, embodying and being truly considering in their decision-making purpose as a decision factor is not so present. So it's probably an intention. I'm not saying that's necessarily cheap talk, but it's maybe an intention, but that did not percolate enough. So that means also that it doesn't enable decision makers, team mates to orient their decisions toward the achievement of something that is a bit superordinate to guide them. The second thing is that in most organizations that really work hard in having their different leaders embodying the purpose and making purpose tangible in the everyday actions and aspirational for their teammates, what we observe is that you have also a philosophy of the self and a philosophy of action that relies on autonomy. So that means that, as I often say, you need to take the risk of the other's freedom. And having a purpose makes you more at ease with this idea and not seeing the other as someone that will shirk or will cut corners or not do things, right? So it's also a philosophy and a confidence in yourself as a teammate, in yourself as a leader, that you have to have with the others. So that means that you should also be protected in a way by the organizational culture in this tolerance vis-a-vis autonomy, because if you give more autonomy to people, there are more risks that, you will get benefits because they will be more innovative, more committed, coming with new ideas, new solutions, but also that the probability of some mistakes or mishaps or will also occur. And so, for instance, at Best Buy, Hubert Joly introduced this idea of a card that was, in a sense, like offering the freedom just to develop one project or one idea per year, but for which you had no account to give back if it was a failure or if it did not work, right? So you were just, it was just here just to help you try new things, believing that the autonomy that was given to the decision makers was providing benefits not just for them in their growth as entrepreneurs, as leaders, but also in terms of benefiting the company, of course. So training and workshops, look around, is this existing? Should you just implement this more? Autonomy, do you take the risk of the other's freedom? And third, it's what kind of feedback do you have? I mean, if your organization is truly here for lasting, based on a really motivating and aspirational purpose, that's probably mean also that if you give more autonomy to individuals, that you have to have more feedbacks in order just to reorient, help guide them in their next steps, right? And so the culture of feedback is also a very good indicator of how, let's say, mature in their journey toward a purpose-based leadership an organization is. What kind of feedbacks do you have? Recurrent? Are they positive, passive-aggressive, or signaling more the mistakes than the good things done? Are they developmental, etc.? All these things can be worked to making purpose tangible and aspirational, and not just a label on some commercial documents. Third factor, it's recognition and incentives. So this was one of the three answers that you had in the poll. It's super important also to have this. And here you have two things that really do matter. The first one is that if an organization has a purpose, that means that it knows, and the top managers know, that actually it's the people of the collective that make the organization alive and help it develop and thrive. So therefore, instead of having their own faces as the one who speak for the organization, being a purposeful organization means that you trust actually everybody in the company, and that you can actually have as the best ambassadors the people of the organization. So here you have different ways of doing this. Coordinating the multiple communication means that you have. So Lush, for instance, I mentioned this company before, but has a quite exceptional multi-channel kind of communication through the people that constitute the organization. Or Salesforce Trailblazers stories, for instance, another example where you see how actually they had to deal with difficult cases or challenges and problems that put people of the organization front, center of the organization. This is to recognize that to achieve the purpose is not just the top executives and leaders that do it, but actually it's everybody when they face the clients, when they face the requests, the complaints, that matters. And the second lever is in terms of incentives. Here, it's very, very essential just to have actually incentives in place and thinking through them in a very efficient way. I mean by that if you reward people for genuine and authentic initiatives that they have, in psychology, we know that you can basically empty out their own intrinsic motivation. At the same time, you need to find a balance and create some monetary incentives to orient the organization towards the objectives that are aligned with the purpose. As I said, purpose is a reason for being. It's non-financial. Although if you are able just to activate the three levers in terms of all leaders at all levels, embody the purpose, that if you make purpose tangible and aspirational, and if you recognize people and find some incentives, then you will get the best of purpose. And instead of having a null effect, you will be able just to be on the side of the positive outcomes in terms of commitment, in terms of ideation and new ideas, as I was saying, in terms of organizational efficiency, in terms of reduction of mistakes and errors that could be actually very detrimental for the organization. So an indirect effect of all these positive outcomes is that your financial performance will increase. And this is what we find in the research that we are conducting at the Purpose Center at HEC Paris. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Durand. Fascinating masterclass, and plenty of questions have been sent in from around the world. And I wanted to start with Catherine in Paris, who sends us this comment and question. Professor Durand, you explored the elements that allow firms, she says, to excel by integrating social and environmental questions and concerns in their business. How challenging for you, and I think your co-author, was it to do this research?
Oh, yes. So, of course, I mean, researching on purpose is not so easy. So if you like just to take only the statements, as I was saying, it's not so difficult, because then you just need to compile, information from websites or different articles and press. If you want just to get access to how people experience it, as I said, then it becomes much more challenging. So different researchers do different ways. Some people use best place to work kind of data or Glassdoor or some private data providers as well, who do engagement surveys, etc. So it's not so easy just to connect purpose to some outcome variables, but it's possible to get at it. So it's challenging, but it's possible. And you have more and more research that actually look at this, that you can then check at the different levels of the organization, as I said. You can look at different outcomes in terms of team efficiency, firm performance, and multiple other things. So the research is moving fast these days, and I think it's important just to connect this research with practice in a sense that we don't just simply rely on our own experiences. So I worked in this firm, and in this country, and this is the information I collected. Well, today we have data and research that compares across all these different mitigating factors in terms of nationality, size of the firm, level of hierarchy, and all gender, and you can imagine how many other elements that you can have. So yeah.
Moving on to Ibrahim in Cairo, he writes in saying some companies prioritize ethical behavior with vigor, but others, you say in your presentation, have trouble matching their actions with their rhetoric. Which one is winning this battle?
So I think this is a very interesting question. Thank you, Ibrahim, because what is fascinating about what we find in the research is that it's not so much to articulate a purpose that matters. It's the fact that if you do it, you should also activate the levers that I was mentioning. Why so? Because if you don't do it, what is happening is that you're creating basically a gap between what you say and what people in the teams, in the firm, actually feel, experience, see every day. And this generates very negative feedbacks in terms of disengagement, incomprehension, disengagement, or even cynicism. So if you don't think that actually the firm has, I would say, a true purpose, an authentic purpose beyond making money, well, don't formulate just a purpose for the sake of formulating a purpose. I mean, just be a firm, a regular firm, and don't pretend. This is what I would say. If you are actually articulating a purpose, you do this this work of connecting your stakeholders, reflecting of how you are perceived, looking at your business portfolio or product portfolio, and you see that some of the products, some of the businesses do not align anymore with actually the thrust that is emerging, from the collective body. Of the organization, so be it. So that means that probably you need to sell some businesses, to close some divisions, perhaps, and refocus and collect all this positive energy toward your goal. So I'm certainly not saying that every firm should have defined a purpose or a raison d'être, but that when you do it well and go full speed, and just to try to take advantage of this. Of these benefits. Again, firms with a statement, the effect on performance is nil, because you have the positives and the negatives forces that are playing against each other and cancel out the main effects. That's what the effect is flat. If you alleviate all the negative concerns and start actually tapping into the reservoir of enthusiasm, authenticity, commitment, engagement, etc., then you start, benefiting from the virtuous circle and making a difference.
And there have been major companies that have embarked on this. You mentioned, I think, Lush. There's Veolia. There's Unilever. So there is a certain. There are some major names and brands that have embarked, and it does take courage. But perhaps less and less as more and more of these multinationals recognized and I think appreciated go into purposeful leadership.
What we show also is that actually this is attractive for actually employees. I mean, for candidates. And again, if you just attract candidates with this purpose and the values around it, but that you don't deliver on everyday work. Then you will face the problem of retention. And so you have lots of inflows, but lots of outflows, and basically you are tiring a bit the organization with these in and outs. Whereas if you are true and do your best to achieve the purpose and again incarnate it, embody it at the different levels, have the training, the workshop sessions just to acculturate and reflect on this, you are more likely to attract better talents and to retain them longer time. So that means that And some researchers show that you are also able just to attract them and pay them less than their market value, between 5, 6, 7% less. So if they accept this, it's not just to be fooled by actually then seeing top executives or mid-level managers not playing the game, being promoted and taking more responsibilities. So this is could be really detrimental for the firm. So you will be unraveling basically what we would have tried to crystallize. So it's engaging, but it's rewarding. And if you don't think that the organization can, in a sense, bear the cost, don't do it. I mean. And then we will see who will be winning at the end, because then the market will tell.
Well, that leads me to a question that was sent in from Simone in Dallas, Texas. She says, Professor Durand, you say the purposeful approach is a continual journey, that it's fraught with complexities. So she asks, at the same time, the long-term rewards are great, as you were mentioning. So how optimistic are you that leaders are ready to take this journey?
So what I said also is that actually you need to have a clear incentive policy. And incentive policies are dependent upon the governance of the firm, right? So imagine that you are in a family firm, non-listed, with very strong values. Take Mars, for instance, in the US and everywhere. They are not in the same position as a company, you mentioned Unilever, that actually is the floating capital is just 100%. So that means that lots of demands from multiple shareholders, etc. So it's true that the way you can promise to deliver value will be very dependent on the governance system, which depends on the ownership, right? So in a case of private firm that actually is looking for longer term, the kinds of incentives will be different. The kind of journey will be also maybe slower pace, or depending on the different condition and characterizations. Whereas for a private firm with lots of floating capital, the first mistake can cost a lot. The CEO can lose the trust of some of his investors. The stock price can go down. So that means that I would say there are very different ways at tackling this question of incarnation, aspiration, and incentives.
Rodolphe, let's turn our gaze towards the East because Kirti, who's a research scholar at the Faculty of Management Studies at the University of Delhi, writes in a very short question. How can you synchronize purpose between all the team?
Oh, so that's also another super interesting question. What we found that was very impactful on the performance of the teams is not the average level of purpose clarity in the teams. So, for instance, we had access to several hundreds of thousands of engagement surveys, and the average on questionnaires between 1 and 7 is roughly 4.5, right? But what we observe is that the firms that do the best are the ones that not simply have the highest average across their teams, but more the ones that have the lower variance across the teams. The variance in teams' purpose clarity goes from 2.3 to 6.5, so the average is 4.7, right? And so to be a firm that is performing well in terms of incarnation of the purpose and reaping the benefits of that policy is not simply one that has good average, but that has a low variance. So you don't have in your firm a team with a 2.3, meaning that here you have problems of leadership, meaning that the leader doesn't incarnate the purpose, or is not genuine, or and others that are super involved. So you should try to reduce this variance, and this is how you will get the benefits.
Well, we stay in the East for one final question. I mean, we have several, but I've chosen the one written in by Farida, who is in Islamabad. And she says, you say purpose-driven culture is about experimentation, agility, and reinterpretation. How are this approach taught in the Institute SNO that you
that's very
direct?
interesting. Yeah, so we have multiple ways of trying this, depending on the participants, we don't teach them, but we make them experience. So we have, for instance, situations that we offer, we have games. Of course, we have more like traditional and regular programs as well. So you have multiple ways of making feel actually what it means to be authentic in the way you want to incarnate a purpose, a corporate purpose or an organizational purpose, and multiple different ways to have some peer effects in a group, understanding why they are resisting. Because maybe you're just in this company just for the salary, the wage that you will get, and that could be fine, right? But discussing all these different elements, the positive, the negative, peer effects. So I would say there is not just one nail and one hammer. You have multiple tools actually just to be able to convey this idea and these messages.
My thanks to you,
Thank you,
Professor
Daniel.
Rodolphe Durand. We could talk for hours, I think. Unfortunately, time is running out. I'd just like to remind our viewers around the world that Rodolphe is director at HEC's SNO Purpose Center and professor in the school's strategy department. He's also, by the way, the co-author of a paper entitled How Leaders Can Create a Purpose-Driven Culture, which I invite you all to read. And just a final word before we leave you to say that our next masterclass session will feature Ekaterina Nechaeva. She's a professor of management and resources at HEC Paris, and she'll be presenting an insight on women in leadership and what hinders women's aspirations. So please tune in. I think it will be a fascinating masterclass. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Until the next time.
Hi.
Good morning.
Bonjour. Hello. Hola. Ni hao. Howdy.
Explain the environment.
Creativity is a social experience. You're not creative alone.
Today we're going to talk about things like trust and teams, and this is something that I've been studying for the past 15 years of my life.